which is Dubai Islamic Bank. So, and also Dubai announced that this will be then for future accelerator for the Islamic initiatives. And also I think the Islamic finance and what has been listed also in the NASDAQ from Sukuk. Now we are, I think, we're ranking #1 to have an Islamic Sukuk. So I think this platform also is one of the initiatives to have within the Dubai Islamic economy, actually. So again, thank you for joining us for today's event, and I think it's very important to launch this report, and really will continue our efforts to enhance the Islamic economy, and all together will be part of this initiative. Thank you again.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rafiuddin Shiko, CEO and MD, and Ms. Iman Ali, Research Analyst from DinarStandard, will now share a few key insights from the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report. Please.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I greet you all with the greeting of Islam, and also send salawat to our beloved Prophet. Allahumma salli ala Sayyid. I thank the team that has worked very hard on this report this year, around 20 analysts who have worked worldwide. I also want to thank over actually hundreds of experts, and we've even interviewed and done focus groups with millennials and Gen Zs from around the world to understand their views of this economy. So I want to thank them. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the Dubai Economy and Tourism, DET in particular, for their continuing support of this incredible vision that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed had put forth, not only for the benefit of Dubai and UAE, but really contributing this platform for the benefit of the whole global Islamic economy. Today, I am also thankful to our wonderful hosts at NASDAQ Dubai, who continue to show the importance and highlight the relevance of Islamic economy here in Dubai and the world through this platform that is NASDAQ. So with this, I welcome all of you to the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2022. We are at the onset of Ramadan, and it is only appropriate to highlight that this work shows the importance of ethics and spirituality in all aspects of life, including economy. This report represents the largest faith-based economy in the world. So what is the state of the global Islamic economy in 2022? As His Excellency mentioned, we are in the 9th year of this report, Your Excellency. And this tool has been an incredible resource for investors, for governments in policy making on looking at this economy as a means for economic growth and diversification. It has been a tool, we know for a fact, for many industry players in terms of government, in terms of their industrial strategies and markets in growing their products and services. I'm joined today with my colleague and our star analyst, Iman Ali, who will cover some of the numbers. But I want to also highlight a few important points. That the report is not only supported, had the support also of many other players. And I just want to, just make sure it's moving forward. All right, I might need some help. It's not. Okay, so I just want to also acknowledge and thank, we have strategic partners from around the world who have also supported this work, and some of them are here today with us in the panel. Now, I will also just conclude by saying that if you want to ask me before we go through the numbers, what has been the headline for this year, I would say to you that I'm humbled to share that the state of the global Islamic economy continues to be very strong. And you will see in the numbers how the post-COVID recovery has been strong across the sectors of the Islamic economy. as well as its role in the global challenges at a global level of sustainability and social impact, addressing poverty, equity, inequity, has also been now pronounced by the role of this ethics-based Islamic economy. So this to us is the very exciting basis on which we share the numbers with you. So now on to some numbers. This year, as I highlighted, we have seen recovery from a full recovery almost to the pre-COVID time of the size of the Islamic economy. As many of you who have covered this know, we identify 7 industry sectors, and these are sectors whose core products and services are affected by Islamic law. And these, as you see on the left-hand side of the chart, are food, fashion, cosmetics, travel, tourism, pharma, and on the right-hand side, Islamic finance as the anchor or the engine of this real economy sectors. The real economy sectors represent about $2.065 trillion in 2020 of consumer spending worldwide across these sectors that are affected by halal requirement and Islamic economy. On the right-hand side with Islamic finance, on the diagram you see about $6 trillion of assets under management. Collectively, this is an interconnected economy that is truly global today. The next big piece that the report covers that many government entities are very interested is the objective benchmark analysis. And I am proud to continue to share that with our support of Dubai Economy and Tourism and our partners at Dubai, we have been keeping the objectivity of the report and doing an objective analysis of which governments around the world, and we cover 81 countries, have the strongest ecosystem for the development of Islamic economy. Once again this year, same as last year, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and UAE lead the list. This is out of 81 economies worldwide. We did, for the first time in our ranking history of 9 years, have done an adjustment to the methodology, whereby we have increased the weightage of the food sector in the mix of the weightage, because the indicator is comprised of 51 indicators today, 51 metrics, and we have also added innovation and technology as one of the tools. You will find a lot of interesting analysis on per sector which countries are doing strongest. We conclude a complete analysis. It's a good 200-page report, so I'm not sure many of you will go through it, but we know for a fact that each sector that we cover in depth gives a lot of insight and coverage from this past year. Through the report, we've identified 35 signals of opportunities for growth and development for investors, for governments in terms of looking at economic development opportunity areas, as well as for industry players. These 35 signals cover the 7 sectors. To give you some highlights, within food sector, as you all know, because of the supply chain disruption, food security has become a major priority for our government and Islamic economy. And this is driving nearshore strategies in terms of supply chain. It's driving investments related to food security and developing our own food ecosystem. We also seek a convenient and nutritious meal because of the focus of COVID on it. And I'll just touch on a few and I'll move on. You will find the insights in the report. On Islamic finance, we have jurisdictions such as Indonesia really driving with one of the largest mergers that happened last year of the 3 major Islamic banks merging in Indonesia, as well as the formation of a federal level entity in Indonesia to manage the growth of their overall Islamic economy. Similarly, we see a lot of Web 3.0 and digitization and digital aspects in the exciting space of media. You see a lot of content that's being generated that are good Islamic values-based dramas and serials and movies. And that whole economy, as you saw from our numbers, is over almost $100 billion around that. Gaming industry is also looking. So these are some of the highlights. With this, what I will do is I will pass on to my colleague, young colleague, because one of the main drivers of the Islamic economy worldwide is the young population of this global Muslim population worldwide. On average, the average age, people of the age of 15 to 30, the percentage of the population within the Muslim population worldwide is 27%, and it is expected to go to 30% by 2030. This is a significant young population. So we have to be conscious of the the drivers. And with that, I'll have Iman come on the floor and share some of the views.
Thank you, Mr. Rafiuddin. Hello, confirming you can hear me. Perfect. Assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So like Mr. Rafiuddin said, this is one of the most exciting part of our report, which is special feature on Gen Z and millennial views on the Islamic economy. We interviewed some really talented and enthusiastic individuals and influencers to hear their views on the Islamic economy. So each sector chapter in the report covers their views on each of the sectors. And we had a very, very interesting focus group discussion online. And let me just quickly quote a few of these sayings of these individuals. So this is Heba from Austria, and she says, "When I pay cash in America, people go like, wait, you're not from here, right? You're from Europe." So that's something that I was brought up with, and so I usually use cash. Well, I'm like this as well, nonetheless. Michal from UAE, he says, "Younger Michal would go for discounts, but now I realize quality gets affected, and that's more important." Then we have Muhammad Abdul Alim from USA. He says, in terms of challenges, he says, "When I travel, I look for a mosque and then try to branch out hotels that are close to the mosque. Also, I want better bathrooms." And Elisa from Malaysia, she says, in terms of her suggestions, she says, "When I went to Japan, I was given a complete guideline on where halal food is available. And even at times, they tell you what perception the Japanese have about Muslims." So as you may have noticed, for each of the sector chapters, we covered their views, their shopping and spending habits, their challenges, and also we captured some of their suggestions. Right, investments in the Islamic economy. We also cover extensively investments in the Islamic economy within the report. These investments cover the Islamic finance, being covering the largest of the investments, about 66%, followed by the halal food and the other sectors. Investments mean we cover venture capital, merger and acquisitions, and private equity. As you can see on the screen, we have the countries that have the most of the investments in the Islamic economy, with UAE being with the highest transactions in the Islamic economy. Trade in the Islamic economy. The total trade, we also cover the trade, halal trade in Islamic economy within the report. And as you can see here, the OIC imports totaled $279 billion. And this is projected to grow by 3.8% within the next 5 years, right? Reaching about $336 billion by 2025. Another interesting thing I really want you to look at here is the map. So the map shows us the top 5 OIC importers and the top 5 exporters to the OIC. And we have an extensive description or detail about this. What I really want to tell you is, of the top 10 exporters to the OIC, by the way, which most of them are the non-OIC countries, 9 out of the 10 were those that were most affected by the COVID-19. This is as of the 3rd quarter in 2021, meaning they had most of the COVID-19 cases. Now what this means for trade is supply chain disruptions. We saw food insecurities, and especially since food covers most of the trade, as you can see here, 72% of the trade. What opportunity does this bring for halal economy? Well, this is our opportunity. This is our chance for the OIC member countries to, number 1, be self-sufficient, and number 2, to increase their intra-OIC trade, because they have the capabilities to do so. Right, finally from my side, the dashboard. So those of you who have been following us, you know that last year we launched the dashboard, and this year we are back again with updated data, and so I would quickly want to demonstrate the dashboard.
Sure, sorry.
Okay, let me quickly demonstrate the dashboard to you and show you what it looks like. Basically, the dashboard includes the trade map, which will tell you the top exporters and importers in the OIC, globally, by the way. It covers the investments, so you can see some of the summarized investments in each of the sector. Then, so this dashboard covers an aggregate data as well as sector specific. You will also find the Global Islamic Economy indicator per sector, which is the ranking. And finally, you'll also see some of the signals of opportunities that are mentioned here. How do you get to the dashboard? Well, visit SalaamGateway.com, the report page, and you can find our dashboard there. With that, I would give the stage back to Brother Rafi.
Thank you. Round of applause for our star analyst, Iman, who had been working very hard with the rest of the team on the report. We are here in the UAE, and as we know, the commitment that and the vision with which His Highness saw and sees the role of Islamic economy for Dubai in particular and widely for UAE. So just a few comments on where is UAE in particular in this global Islamic economy context. As you saw from the ecosystem ranking, but that ranking is anchored around UAE's strength in Islamic finance first and foremost, and secondly in its lifestyle sectors of tourism, modest fashion, and so forth. So as you see on the strong driver side, ranked third in the index, $250 billion in Islamic finance assets, which is fourth largest, 3.2 million Muslim tourists, third largest, this is our estimate, 71.5 billion in Muslim lifestyle spend, such as modest fashion, media, and so forth. The opportunity for Dubai and UAE, and this is continues to be the case, is on the trade side. While, as Iman mentioned, the over $200 billion in halal product trade is happening, UAE is ranked 30th in the halal products and lifestyle exports, which is only 1% of the trade that's happening. So there's tremendous opportunity for UAE to move up, being the hub of re-exports, but also now increasingly manufacturing. So this is a key, and in the report you will see various case studies of this past year highlighting stories of various players across these sectors who are playing a key role. So with this, I conclude, and I will encourage all of you to visit SalaamGateway.com to follow it for regular updates, weekly updates that it covers, but you can download the report from there, and you can also get it from the QR code here. It's fully available, freely available to all of us to benefit from. Again, thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Rafiuddin. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is now open for questions.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
No problem. Iman.
Anyone has questions? No questions? Yes.
Hi, Abdulaziz here from Amani Advisors. I noticed in the report you mentioned the gaming industry. What does that entail?
Sure. So video games, as you know, through COVID, the move on entertainment, the move to digital was very high in terms of online entertainment. And so video gaming has been the sector that had benefited the most during COVID, in fact, if I would say, besides shipping, I think they say. Within the world growth on the video gaming spending, I don't have the exact numbers, it's in the report. The highest growth, in fact, has been in the GCC of the spending on various kinds of video games. Now, the challenge is the content of the video game is not really the best suited to what we would call family values-based games and ethical values-based games, so forth. So there is a stated need where, similar to animated content for children or movies or serials, even in video gaming, there are now entrepreneurship that's happening of having video games that are more related to our heritage, maybe bringing storylines from our history, heritage, and values. So that's what it's referring to.
Any more questions?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A quick one for you guys. As you were going through first of all, congratulations on the report. And as you were going through the opportunities, there was a mention about increasing the trade between the OIC countries. In your expert opinion, what is it that regional governments or global governments or OIC as a whole needs to do in order to have initiatives in place? What action needs to be called?
Sure. So we are graced today by Her Excellency Latifa, who is kind enough to join us at this launch event, and she's the Director General of the OIC's body to promote trade amongst OIC countries. And in fact, her presence itself is an evidence of the focus now, ICDT and other within Islamic Development Bank and OIC, is to develop halal trade. From our perspective, there has to be a clear business case, and as the team and Her Excellency knows. And the business case now is being driven by the importance of food security, by the importance of, as you saw, as Iman showed, the challenge of the long supply chain, and now we need suppliers maybe nearer to us from Sudan or Turkey or Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So I think there is both now the interest and effort from OIC as well as the real need. Iman, if you wanted to add anything.
Anyone else would like to add a question? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rafiuddin. Thank you. That was an interesting session indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now move to a panel discussion on the challenges and opportunities ahead of the Islamic economy. So our panelists today, Dr. Suhail Zubairi, Senior Advisor of Islamic Finance at the Department of Economy and Tourism in Dubai. If you may please be seated. Ms. Asma Ahad, Director of Halal Market Development, Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America. Thank you. Mr. Sudhakar Gupta, Director of International Business Development, IFFCO Group of Companies. And Mr. Diko Ladan, CEO of Dar al-Halal, Nigeria. Thank you. The session will be moderated by Ms. Unisa Zaman, Communications Consultant and Islamic Finance Expert. Thank you.
Right then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, everyone who is tuned in and those that are present. Thank you for joining us today. So, yeah, it gives me no greater pleasure than to be discussing the report here today with our esteemed experts in the field. Just to give you a little bit of a background on myself. So I work in communications, and more specifically with regards to Islamic fintech. I've been in this field for roughly 3 years now, and in financial communications for coming up to 7. I've led the largest digital transformation for EY and now look to develop that further within the Islamic finance sector, as well as expanding financial literacy for women interested in halal finance. And like I said, I'm excited to get to know our guests today, to learn a bit further, and really understand what unlocking potential means, and unlocking opportunity certainly. So without any further ado, let's get started. So, as we can understand and we've seen during this report, food and finance play an incredible part and role within our economy. And I'm sure that's no surprise to many of us in many different ways, of course, globally speaking. And I think that's certainly a big factor in how we navigate the economy and how we work within it as well. So I think something that's really key to understanding further is looking at, for example, the interconnectivity of the market, and more specifically, let's start with Suhail. Looking at halal finance as an integrative tool, how do you feel we can incorporate that better to make our ecosystem halal from start to finish?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. You see, I represent Dubai Economy and Tourism, Government of Dubai. But these thoughts are my own. So it's a disclaimer before I start. Actually, as you know that in UAE, there'll be a corporate tax starting from next year. So I think this is an excellent opportunity to set up some kind of halal park. And then that halal park, actually, I look at it, the bigger picture, is that halal park should have all-encompassing elements of the Islamic economy. For example, it should have the halal manufacturers. It should have the Islamic banks and Islamic windows to provide the Islamic finance. It should have the certification bodies to certify the products as halal. It should have the takaful companies to provide the Islamic insurance. It should also have some kind of mechanism whereby it's a one window solution that if a halal manufacturer is getting a license in the halal park, it should be supported in the whole process from within the Islamic economy. It shouldn't have to go out, because you see what happens currently is that most of the halal manufacturers do have the funding coming from the conventional banking side. So while the end product is halal, the means to achieve that are not halal. They are conventional finance. So this is a way to, now the next step could be to label it. How do you label it? Because you already have a halal label. So if you could make it as a halal and tayyib, for example, come up with a new sort of label called halal and tayyib. And now there's a lot of talk about organic, so maybe we can make it halal, organic, and tayyib, HOT, so it will be hot, for example, the label. And that label should be digitized label, and it should have, if you scan it from your mobile phone, you will be able to get full information as to how this particular product has been manufactured, from where the raw material came, and who financed it, which Islamic institution financed it, and at the end, who certified it as a halal product. So keeping all these things in mind, I think it would be a very good idea if we could somehow form an halal and tayyib, or halal, organic and tayyib, park in UAE, for example. And you will see that the manufacturers from the other jurisdiction will be attracted towards it, because obviously the corporate tax will not be applied on a halal park. So in my personal opinion, these are the few thoughts. This will also strengthen the vision of Dubai, the capital of Islamic economy, because so far there is no such halal and tayyib zone or park in the world. So Dubai could be the first one to actually introduce that concept. So in a nutshell, I think this is a way to connect Islamic finance with the halal industry, and to actually, we need some energy to push the halal industry. So Islamic finance could be the best way to support it, so that the entire cycle is halal.
Completely. I think you could bring up some excellent and incredibly interesting points, in fact, particularly within the sector. I think working closely in alignment with many different fintechs across the globe, I think something I see quite frequently firsthand is, as this report has also clearly demonstrated, is the rise and influx of influence amongst millennials and Gen Z. I think we definitely saw that emergence actually sort of in line with ESG as a trend in 2017, 2018. And as we move towards, in this post-pandemic world, towards more equity, equality, fairness, and understanding the real meaning behind sustainable development and what that looks like, I think we're definitely seeing that trend. And I can say probably firsthand when looking at fintechs in the UK, which is the UK being one of the largest hubs outside of the MENA region in performing and excelling very well in fintech, Islamic fintech more specifically, with 39 companies and growing. You can really see the demand in wanting products that really meet their needs. And I really like the idea of creating a label, a hot label. I think that's really interesting, certainly. perhaps a career in communications as well, Sahel. Definitely. I think as we go on, we can definitely, as mentioned, as well as finance, we can also talk about food. Food is something that connects us all together. I know Ramadan, as we all know, Ramadan is coming up, which is an abstinence of food. But I think it's definitely something that really connects us as people and as cultures. And I think something I would just like to tap into a bit further with Asma is looking at how the halal industry is becoming so mainstream in countries like the US, in the UK certainly, and definitely where there are sizable Muslim populations, such as in France. So it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit more about how you feel it's becoming more mainstream, how it's being adopted, and how it's really part of the synergy and makeup of everyday life.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. As Mrs. introduced me, I'm Asma Had with Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America, and we're one of the leading halal certifying bodies in the world. And we see growth in Muslim majority countries, as well as countries like the US, where Muslims are a minority in the halal space. And what's driving this growth, much like my predecessor has said here, is the demand for organic, natural, trust and transparency products. And these are emerging spaces. And these are emerging spaces often define the future mainstream ideas. And what we're seeing is halal is right in the same niche as organic and natural. And a lot of brands like Organic Valley or Saffron Road that are really embracing clear and transparent labels are embracing halal as well. And this is not just because the brands are embracing it, but the consumers are looking for it. The consumers are looking for products that they could trace the ingredients to the source, kind of like the concept of pure to source, like what's happening at the point of production, at the farm, at the point of raising the animal. What are you feeding the animal? How are you treating the animal? What's happening at the time of slaughter? And that's really becoming more and more important. And as we have more sustainable economies and more conscious buyers, you're going to see more of this grow. And halal is definitely on trend with the concept of tracing the ingredients, as well as the concept of tayyib. And clear label and the right logo and the right certification is going to be critical to keeping the trust of consumers, and that's what's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've raised some really fantastic points, certainly. I'd love to extend this on further to Sudhakar, if possible, regarding sort of consumer trends and where you see the halal sector moving around the world.
We would like to say that what we have seen with this pandemic happening, we have seen that all the consumers are looking now for more reliable, more safe, and more traceable food. And certainly we as a family business in Dubai since 1975 have been driving and investing in the same halal food manufacturing in the region. And we see that with all the consumers just saw in the report with Gen Zs and so on, it's not all about quality, it's not about just reliability, it's about also have a meaningful life, which is more an ethical life people like to live. So we believe that being able to encompass all the things we saw in the report, and also with my fellow panelists, we have been working on full traceability. We have started that with our olive oil business in Tunisia, where we can scan a bottle with a QR code, you can go down to the tree. And we are extending that to the rest of the business within our group. So we do see a lot of potential in terms of building this platform further and to be able to offer the consumers much more reliable food with the right quality. We continue to also invest in healthier living lifestyles, because at the end of the day, all of us have learned that while social connection is very important now during pandemic, we have really missed each other through the Zoom calls. And I think while we have gone back to the word with social life and also living a healthier life, but we don't know what's coming. So I think all this requirement post-pandemic has resulted, not only us, but all manufacturers in the region, to think differently and to think the way we are going to address the younger population, which I addressed very clearly, around 27 to 30% of population, which is Gen Zs. So I think it's very important that we continue to invest. And we as a group are investing in markets like Indonesia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and also as far as Iraq as well. So we are going to the destination markets and trying to drive our ethical way of living and ethical way of offering the products, which is part of our DNA as a family. And just to add to further, we certainly are the largest halal buffalo meat exporter out of India since many, many years. And we continue to do that out of UAE as well. So thank you so much.
Certainly. Thank you so much for that. And of course, there would be no food without agriculture. So I'd love to discuss that further with Deco with regards to, more specifically, Nigeria being such a major player with the halal sector and halal food market more specifically. I'd love to hear your thoughts more so on Nigeria's proposition, its opportunities, and how it's addressing the situation currently, particularly in this post-pandemic food insecure world.
Salam, and thank you very much for inviting me. Nigeria, as you said, is huge in terms of population and land. It's largely arable, at least 90%, so there's the whole range and potential of all forms of agriculture. The government in particular has been very focused on food security, and it has created initiatives and accepted that halal products are integral to food security, and it's promoting it. And more recently, the growth has been driven by not only the government through the central bank and other institutions. There is the rise of Islamic finance in Nigeria. We have the rise of investment banks and financial institutions, and the regular commercial banks are obtaining licenses for non-profit operations, which is another term for Islamic finance. What we see is that being the hub of commerce in West Africa and stretching through to Central Africa, there is plenty of opportunity. The population, at least over 200 million, provides a market. And then when you stretch it to the borders of Libya and all the way to Gambia, we are able to offer a destination for both investors and also in-country agriculture. What we find as a big challenge in Dar al-Halal is the need for awareness by the local population, because the majority of the producers are smallholders. There is a rise of commercial agriculture, so some of the big companies are producing, but it's still not enough, so there is the need for import. So what we want to do is to say, okay, bring investment within Nigeria, within West Africa, and also we can do specific farming for export. The other need or the gap that is being addressed by the Muslim Ummah is certification and accreditation. So when we combine all this, you find that there is plenty to do, and there is a lot of interest in Nigeria in particular. However, what is lacking is the backbone of trade. So when you look at what UAE is doing, as an example, you find that it has, within a very short period, become the hub for global halal economy. So with DinarStandard as our partners, what we've done is we've also focused on bridging that gap and focusing on private sector to complement the government effort. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time on that question. You mentioned so many great points, and more specifically with regards to agriculture and agri-tech and how it can really provide that surgence in uplifting the sector. I think we definitely see some of that being mirror imaged in countries such as Pakistan, with the likes of Taza, who have been able to secure funding in such a way that it's really amazing. And I think Nigeria is doing something very similar as these hubs, as not just emerging markets, but also with the grace and benefit of youth behind it. I can definitely see and envisage how this is going to only grow and propel further, as the report discusses. I think as we go into talking a little bit further, and we kind of touched upon a little bit of how we can sort of help develop this sector further with regards to accrediting, creating sort of labels and such. I think something that we're definitely keen on discussing further is sort of the age-old standardization, which is a historic topic in Islamic finance, certainly. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about sort of the latest on the front of Dana gas type, particularly with regards to its surfacing and potentially dampening the spirit of the industry.
Thank you. You see, you mentioned Dana gas, and I'm the culprit who did the restructuring of Dana gas. So I can assure you that there was nothing wrong from Sharia perspective. It was a wrong advice given by the advisors to Dana gas to claim that this sukuk is no more Sharia compliant, so renege from the payment commitment, which was the worst thing that they had done actually. Had they been given the correct advice, they would have been protected from Sharia principles anyway. So it is past. A lot of water has gone down the bridge. Well, standardization, it has been discussed for almost 2 decades now, since Islamic finance started to grow up. The perception actually is that the individual scholars have got their individual opinion, so you cannot standardize it. And they say that, well, if you go to a doctor, he will tell you something. If you go to another doctor, he will give you something else. Similarly, the lawyers also will give you different opinions. So forget about standardization in Islamic finance. And also, there is a myth. The myth is that if you do standardization, then you are actually strangulating the innovation. Because once the standardization comes, the innovation goes. Actually, these two things are incorrect. We have the shining examples of IOP standards, the IFSB standards, and IFM. They have brought standards, and those standards are playing very big role, in taking the industry to the next level. So both the perception and the myth have been sort of proven wrong. Now, what we are doing at DET is that, we are spearheading project for the Global Islamic Finance Code. So what we are trying to do is to provide from Dubai, with the help of Islamic Development Bank, a legal framework, a global legal framework on Islamic finance. So our starting point is the end product of the IOP. So IOP standards, we are codifying them, these IOP standards. So by doing that, what we will do is that we will provide a legal framework to the globe, whereby the parties entering into the Islamic finance contract, they will be protected by the law, because at the moment it's not the case. So individual countries, they have different laws here and there, but there is no all-encompassing, overwhelming law, which can provide the protection to the parties entering into Islamic contract. That's why we see the issues like Dana Gas and the Bloom Bank, and then the Investment Dar and the others. So once this code comes into play, then obviously it will be a global legal framework. So like we have the other standards, the global standards, similarly it will be the code as well. So this is basically, we have also thought that this particular global legal framework will provide dispute resolution channel. For example, a lot of disputes happen in Islamic finance. So this particular framework will be in a position to actually support the institutions like IICRA, for example, the International Islamic Conciliation and Reconciliation Council. They will be able to take this code and they will be able to basically do their dispute resolution based on this. Now, the next thing which can really bring benefit to Islamic finance from this code is that we are actually in the middle of 1.1% or 1.5% of the global financial asset. Islamic finance is very small.
Yeah.
So from where the next generation growth should come, it should be non-OIC countries. The non-OIC countries are not in a position to enter Islamic finance because they don't have any global law. So once you introduce the global law, through the international treaty, the signatories of those countries will actually be able to roll out the Islamic finance in their own backyard. So this will actually enhance the overall size of Islamic finance from 1.5 to maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10% over the next 10 to 15 years. So this actually, DET is currently working on this huge project. And hopefully we should be in a position to give you the good news by end of the year.
Inshallah. Yeah. I think you've once again brought up some really interesting points. I think it's a tale as old as time, innovation versus regulation, and how do we sort of marry the two, but also we're sort of able to create that impact and sort of legislate for it as well. I think the idea of having that sort of global treaty and having that level of basically accountability, if you will, and having sort of a benchmark might be really interesting. And as you mentioned, non-OIC countries. So having worked in markets like the UK, like France, like Germany, etc., I think it's really interesting when we see sizable Muslim populations in largely non-Muslim majority countries, the level of commitment from diaspora communities towards living a halal lifestyle, and that really being embedded thoroughly and married together with either being a millennial or being Gen Z, where they want to adapt these sort of rules and laws, but embed them more clearly. Sorry about that. Embed them more clearly and more thoroughly as part of their lifestyle. I think long gone are the days of sort of going down to a retail Islamic bank, applying for a mortgage loan, and then it taking approximately 3 years. So I think it's really exciting. I'm seeing so much change myself, and definitely something I'd love to discuss further. I think just to tap into innovation.
Just one thing. It will not only help the Muslims living in the non-OIC countries, but it will also help the population of those non-OIC countries.
Very
because
true.
at the end of the day, this is only a financial system,
Yeah.
If you remove Islamic, then look at the parameters.
Yeah.
They're pretty fair.
Yeah,
So
and I think you really bring up something very interesting there, because more specifically, especially when we look at things like sukuk as well, and looking at its popularity, and I can speak sort of firsthand, having discussed this with sort of government departments as well, the adoption and interest amongst non-Muslims in the UK, particularly, for example, with Sharia-compliant mortgages, halal mortgages as well, we're seeing a massive exponential rise in the adoption of such. So there's definitely a market for it. We're definitely seeing that rise, and I think something that's very key to that is how we communicate that effectively amongst these non-OIC markets, as together with regulation and such. I just wanted to tap in a little bit further into the social impact thing. So I did touch upon innovation, and I think something that's very clear that we and compelling that we've seen throughout this report is once again the adoption of Islamic social impact, and how that's very much married to Islamic finance and Islamic fintech. So if we're looking at sort of opportunities, and more specifically within the sort of decentralized financial platforms, how can Islamic finance embrace this opportunity?
For the social finance?
Yeah, for the social impact element.
Yeah, you see, by nature, by default, Islamic finance is social finance, actually. And we see social bonds coming up, and also social sukuk and all. They are more sort of closer to the Islamic finance than the conventional, because the investors who invest in those kind of instruments, they're not getting a fixed return, because they are dependent upon what the project will produce, and maybe it will not produce anything. So in that case, they are ready to take the hit. So this is something that Islamic finance already provides, these principles for social finance to basically be expanded further.
Okay, brilliant. It's really interesting. And yeah, it just, once again, just touches upon what the report's clearly been discussing with regards to the rise, I mean, a largeable, sizable population within the global ummah are amongst the sort of millennial, Gen Z, and younger demographic. And I think when we marry that with social impact, and as you mentioned, social impact is inherently part of the Islamic finance framework. I think what's something that we must sort of tackle is how that's communicated effectively and how that's driven forward in doing so. So yeah, I thank you again for your time on that. That was a really interesting part to discuss. Asma, I'd love to hear a little bit further, just deviating back towards sort of food insecurity more specifically, and sort of any challenges that have been exacerbated by the pandemic and what you've seen firsthand.
You know, we, as an organization, IFANCA has been addressing food insecurity since its inception. When you're addressing the halal needs of individuals when they cannot get proper nutrition if it's not halal, that's addressing food insecurity. So we've been addressing it since the beginning, and I think the pandemic has brought food insecurity as a word more mainstream. And what we're learning is that food insecurity during the pandemic has become very acute, but along with it, health insecurity and the underlying health insecurity issues among emerging economies, especially among Muslim economies, is really prevalent. What I didn't realize going into the pandemic is that 7 of the 10 leading vaccine hesitant countries out there happen to be Muslim majority countries. And what's driving this? It's health insecurity is driving this. It's the inability to obtain clear label, transparent vaccines, halal certified, or other concerns that Muslim consumers might have are not being addressed when they're being given vaccines. And this leads to health insecurity and economic instability. When you don't have a healthy population, when you don't have a population that's being given the proper food and nutrition to grow mentally and physically, you're promising them a lifetime of underdevelopment and underperformance. So that's the next generation of kids we're producing. This population bubble, we want them to be ready to take on the challenges of the future. And food security and health security are going to be key to that. IFANCA is committed to addressing those concerns. We're a not-for-profit organization that really predominantly works in the certification space, but we're also partnering with organizations like UNICEF and UNHCR. In the US, we're the founding member of the Islamic Philanthropy Circle for UNHCR. And what we're doing in those spaces is really addressing health insecurity and food security. 63% of all of refugees in the world happen to be Muslim. And so how are we addressing the future? This is the future generation. How are we addressing the food security? How are we preparing these kids to help be the future leaders by giving them the proper nutrition? So those are some of the things that we're starting to address, and we're looking for partners. It's a global initiative, and we're looking for partners to work with in those spaces.
Yeah, definitely. That's fantastic, and so much food for thought when you really think about it. I mean, you definitely see and translate the long-term impact that food insecurity and health insecurity can have to the stability, the wellness of not just a population, a country, its whole economic stability. I think brilliant. And yes, certainly it's entirely a global effort in doing that, maintaining that, and working with those organizations in order to spread that further. So thank you so much for that. I think something I'd like to touch on further is, with Sudhakar more specifically, is talking about the innovations of IFCO and how they're addressing pressing issues such as sustainability and traceability more specifically. Because as we see with sustainability across the globe, whether we're looking at climate change more specifically, whether we're looking at sustainability within the health sector, the food sector, it'd be really interesting just to hear from your perspective what you think.
I think we as a group, what we have seen today, being based out of UAE, I think UAE has given us a lot of foundation in terms of driving change towards sustainability, talking about single-use plastic, looking at carbon credits, looking at various other systems. So we as an organization are committed to ensure that we partner and we also add value in the sustainability supply chain. We also seen, with pandemic happening, it has also raised challenges as well also opportunities for people like us based out of UAE to not only make the country sustainable economically, but also being able to provide food locally to the population which is based here. So we believe that sustainability it cannot be done by one company. It is a collective effort by all of us. Certainly the mandate and the regulations coming up in UAE will help driving sustainability to a point where this can become a sustainable economic stable country. And what we are doing at our end is we are noticing in GCC, every country is driving different change. We are seeing Oman driving agriculture. So we are participating in agriculture in Oman by investing in poultry farms, egg farms, also day-old chicks, for example, by bringing Japanese technology to give the most efficient product to the market. We're also looking at, based in UAE, how we can investing in Saudi Arabia too, because Saudi Arabia is driving more economic or green economy, for example. So we are saying what we do next in Saudi Arabia should be able to add further value. So we are realizing that to be able to bring focus as an organization towards this, we have actually hired a team of experts on sustainability. We couldn't find much talent locally, because this is also mostly coming from a country who are living sustainable living for many, many years. So we have a group of talented people. Now we are driving sustainability through various methodologies, not only in food space, but also in tech side. For example, when we are working in Microsoft, we are saying, okay, how we are adding to the carbon footprint, for example. How we can work with Dubai Silicon Oasis, for example, to carbon credits, for example. What we can do in traceability in terms of ensuring that what product is going into the final consumer product, how can consumer trace back to its origin. But we as an organization, because first of all being Muslim as an organization, is part of our DNA, not today, been a part of our DNA forever. So when I hear my panelists talking about food security, also from Nigeria, for example, economic capabilities, for us, I think collectively we can add value, but from our end, definitely we are committed. We're also looking at creating plant-based food, which people speak about today. We are saying that how we can look at agri-tech locally in UAE to be able to grow certain ingredients which are made in UAE for the plant-based, rather than importing them from other countries to make plant-based food. All this will take an effort. It won't happen tonight. It will not happen tomorrow, but it's a journey which we have embarked on. And we believe that collectively, if we work together with regulators, with the government, with the certification bodies, we can collectively contribute to this innovation pipeline for long time to come.
Definitely.
And we certainly believe, pandemic has really changed. Believe me, it has changed the thought process. It is no more only Muslim, it's non-Muslim population too. So I don't think we should not stay focused on the Muslim population, because Gen Zs, they don't care. What they care is how I'm cared for, how I'm being looked after, and how will I grow, and what is there for me for the future. They don't really cut through nationalities or religion or economic stability. They look at what is for them. I think the report highlights that too, saying that we need to care for them, how they look at it. And when I saw in the report about cash, I think another thing we used to say that you should never lose touch with cash. People get to credit. So I think it's a very smart way to say that while we can do credit, but cash certainly is an element of it. Coming back to the food, I think we as an organization are committed to deliver food which is ethical, quality conscious, traceable, and also being innovative.
Definitely.
I hope it answers your question.
Indeed. Thank you for that. I think certainly it's interesting. I think there's a mention of, and certainly a trend of Gen Z, sorry, I'm British, Gen Z very much being of the mind of being quite socially liberal and motivated by social impact, and yet actually, to my surprise, being quite economically conservative, which slightly differs to millennials. And I think we've kind of seen the sort of divergence between millennials and Gen Z, more specifically within Islamic fintechs or fintechs generally, in terms of adoption of sort of investment apps and attitudes towards investing, for example. But certainly, I think you've raised some really great points. And Rome wasn't built in a day. Ultimately speaking, it's going to take time, and it's about sustainability and the longevity of building this sector out further. Now, Deco, something that I'm incredibly excited to talk to you about is Nigeria and having launched Africa's first climate smart farming center. So I'd love to hear more about the future of agritech in the arena and in Nigeria and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. Particularly, I think something we forget, or something that isn't mentioned enough of, is the sizable population of Muslims in Nigeria, and the economy is flourishing in so many different ways. So I'd just love to hear more about it.
Yes, sustainability, one of the determinants of sustainability challenges in Nigeria is timing, low yields, and lack of precise farming technology. So that is why the government came up with two initiatives. The climate, looking at the impact of climate change on agriculture, water, waste management, and also created NITDA, an information technology agency based on reaching out to the masses and everyone with a cell phone. So everywhere you go, cell phones are common. It's part of everyday life now in Nigeria. So you can use that platform, send out information on weather, on how to develop seeds, improve farming methods, and then leading on to mechanization. Now there is an effort to balance. As you progress into mechanization, people will lose jobs. So there is the effort to make sure the smallholders in particular are supported. You find that, as the report said, the younger generation are the ones driving the innovation. Nigeria, we have a big culture of apps within the country, and it's rising, and it's also rising within the sub-Saharan African region. So what it is how do you get it to the people? Because you cannot, the commercial agriculture is insufficient, as mentioned earlier, but the average farmer needs to know what to do and when to do it. And then there is a lot of move by the community, businesses, looking for opportunities. And that's why improvement on this climate, and then the challenges of facing Nigeria, like flooding. So you tend to find that there is a big effort towards that, where to plant, where not to plant, and more importantly, if you are exporting, you need to send the messages to people. How do you and what do you do to avoid rejection by the end user? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time on that. I think something that we haven't actually touched upon, but something I definitely love to mention, is lifestyle, which also plays a massive part in our day-to-day life, and definitely, certainly, within the Islamic economy. I think something I really wanted to touch upon, as somebody who works with media in so many various different forms, is how it's continued to perform and excel and expand further during the pandemic. And much like the rise and adoption of Netflix culture during the pandemic, more specifically, I think what we're seeing as well is representation of Muslims within the media, and that flourishing further. I mean, I think we can only have to look to the Oscars that have just happened. No, not for that, but certainly about Riz Ahmed being the first Muslim and South Asian man to win an award for a live short film. I think also looking at the popularity of shows like Rami, and this on-demand culture that we as Muslims are also adopting in line with sort of wider society, but having that level of representation to find stories that fit or suit our experiences, our exposure, and our nuances. It's really interesting and something I'd love to sort of speak about further in that instance. I think something that's really interesting is we've seen the rise of, for example, Ertugrul, and when we look at Turkey having jumped astonishingly from 12th to 5th places, and it's being a key player within the economy. I think we see that with the rise of modest fashion, with the likes of Modernisa, with the likes of the adoption of their cultural capital as well, both as a Muslim-friendly country in terms of travel, in terms of food, in terms of leisure. I think those are some key indicators in the way we are moving forward and directing that further. And of course, Ertugrul being a massive part of that, and that adoption once again being part of non-OIC culture. I think that's really interesting. I think just to tap into a few key numbers here, when we look at the Muslim media spend, it's increased by 7.2% into 2021. So that's 231 billion, and it's set to grow by 7.5% this year alone. And I think, yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. I think when we look at, for example, ARB being adopted in John Lewis stores across the UK, we look at the level of fashion and modest fashion week and how that's now becoming very in vogue, very much so, particularly in non-OIC countries, once again, with the rise of social media, with Instagram, with TikTok. I think our cultural capital is only ever going to continue growing and continue this level of adoption amongst those places. I'd love to hear more from the panel in terms of lifestyle, if you have any further thoughts in of course, your own respective countries as well. For example, Asma, how do you feel that level of lifestyle, halal lifestyle, has developed in America?
It's mainstream. What we're seeing the most, where I experience most growth in is like food service spaces. Muslim kids, you have this population bubble, right? You have these young Muslim kids, and they're educated, and they come from educated families. They're going to universities, they're going to kindergarten, secondary school, so on and so forth, and they're looking for halal food. And maybe a generation ago there would be a compromise. You just don't eat at school, you come home hungry. But now the popularization of the understanding of food insecurity and saying, how are we expecting these kids to perform in university and school without the proper nutrition, is really bringing to focus like equity in food. And that brings halal to the table with everybody else when you're talking about food insecure people. So really relevant, because it's the lifestyle that we've been raised in. These children come from these cultures that really value halal and are bringing it to the stage where they're at.
Yeah, definitely. I think you brought up a really interesting point. Just myself being a Brit, for example, having grown up in London, the accessibility to a halal lifestyle is very much at your fingertips. But I know, for example, had that been beyond 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't as accessible. And there's definitely other communities that we can nod our heads to who have sort of paved the way in that, and we've just sort of run with it and developed that further. And I think, yes, you definitely mentioned so many amazing points.
I wanted to add is, even to the conversation of food, we don't really talk about it, but there's a real movement to decolonize the spaces we're in. So when we're talking about food, we're decolonizing our food. We're really talking about, you know what, I eat halal, I'm not apologetic, and I really need it in the spaces that I'm active in, whether it's at school or the university. And really, it really comes from a global movement in that space. So
yeah, thank you so much for that, Asma. I think you once again just bring up an amazing point that it's definitely a surgence and a movement we're seeing amongst millennials and Gen Z, and probably Gen Alpha as they come along in this idea of reclaiming our lifestyle and what it means to us and incorporating it in our wider narrative whilst living in non-OIC countries. I think that takes us towards the end. I'd love to thank my esteemed panel, Mr. Sahel Zaberi, Senior Advisor of Islamic Finance at the Dubai Economy and Tourism, Asma Ahad, Director of Halal Market Development at Ifanka, Sudhakar Gupta, Director International Business Development at IFCO, and of course, Diko Laden, CEO of Dar Al Halal. I have been your host, Unisa Zaman. Please do go ahead and take a look at the report. It's got amazing findings, as we've discussed earlier today. And thank you again for your time. Jazakallah khair. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd love to hear more. Have you asked all your questions? Okay then. All right. Thank you again for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Anisa. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the session. We will now put on a screen where you can download a copy of the report by scanning the QR code. And there are some copies as well on the table over there. Thank you so much for your presence here today. And please join us for refreshments in the back. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Wait, let me. No, here is fine. Thank you everyone for joining us live at NASDAQ Dubai for the launch of the State of the Global Islamic Economy Report 2022. Hope you guys enjoyed and we had an insightful and lively discussion. Please get a copy of your report and the link is given in the description below. Thank you, Ma'as salama.